Good afternoon, Deacon Chris Iyovwaye. You're welcome to Njenje Media TV.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing for this interview. How would you assess the current state of Nigerian economy under President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, and what are the key factors driving its present condition, as you can see within the Nigerian state?
Uh, the economic situation in Nigeria under His Excellency Bola Tinubu is obviously, by all parameters, in a dire strait. Knowing fully well that he came in as a president and immediately ventured into two major policies that borders directly on the well-being of citizens. First, he took away subsidy from petroleum products, and then again floated the naira. Those two policies has affected overwhelmingly the economy of Nigeria. Now, if you follow the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, which puts inflation at 34.19% as of today, you will rather want to agree with me that what we're experiencing today is what can be best described as hyperinflation, not just an inflation. And for those of us who go to the market, we'll probably be playing with 250% of the rate of inflation today. We are well aware of that. Now, if you look at these policies, where the price of products have skyrocketed, you have the cost of petroleum products, getting premium motor spirit at over 1,000 naira. You have the price of diesel that runs the economy at almost 2,000 naira in some locations. You can understand the pressure, we're having in the economy and making it unbearable for citizens to live. As far as I'm concerned, the economy under His Excellency is taking the downward trend, and people are suffering, people cannot breathe, and we really must hope that a time will come where he has to do a U-turn to ensure that those policies are reversed, because the timing, as far as we are concerned, some of us are concerned, is totally in error, and he has to look at that, because there's no policy that every policy has to have a human face. Now you're trying to put policies that will kickstart or jumpstart the economy, and in doing that, the people cannot breathe. The people cannot live any meaningful life. It then comes that you need to sit down and find a way of solving the economic problem as they are today.
You talked about inflation, and I would add the cost of living. Now, as you said, with the inflation rate rising, how are Nigerian household, how do you think they are coping, and what can be done to alleviate these burden on the average citizens? Note that as a result of this hunger day that people were shouting, last month there was this nationwide protest tagged the End Bad Governance protest. What can government do to alleviate these sufferings of the masses?
Well, thank you once again. Every time you hear about what government can do, you have people talking about, palliative. But I want to quickly say, that I'm not a proponent of palliatives. There are a number of things that government can do. Now, if you look at the economy as it is, you will understand that you have an economy that is not producing anything. They are just simply consuming. If you have a government that has the willingness to go back to the drawing board and look at where we once were, where as a nation we were assembling cars, we were producing tires, we were producing batteries. Just look at that. About 3 decades ago, we were producing almost everything, ensuring that the reason for capital flight is reduced to the barest minimum. And then life was bearable for the people. There's not two ways about it. We need to return back there. We need to return to begin to produce things. We need to return to that level of industrialization. We need to be able to empower the people, create an enable environment for the people, to produce things. One thing I believe, particularly when the Nigerian population, 70% of them, they are youthful, youthful population. They are youths, it's makeups of youths. If we create an enable environment for those youths, I tell you, you only need to give Nigeria a few years and you will see a magical turnaround. I tell you for free, sir. You can take that to the bank. So that's why we are saying, just create the environment. Make sure that the small and medium enterprises, is robust. Nigeria is a natural, SME environment. If you look at, for example, you look at China, even in Europe, their economies are driven by SMEs. And Nigeria is right for that. Nigeria is so robust. The people are teachable. The people are willing to learn. Our youths, that's why you see that even with half-baked Nigerians, they arrive in Europe, arrive in America, they are making exploits. What we are saying, create an enable environment for the people to strive. Ensure that power is available. These things are valuable, sir. So like I tell people from place to place, like they try to, to deal with the subject of power because everything rolls on the wheels of power. If you create that environment for our population to thrive, I tell you, sir, give Nigeria the space of 10 years. You won't know that country. And like I tell people, because we don't have a government, that have the willingness to get things done, that be able to set up their priorities. This is where we are. So if they create an enable environment and our youths are empowered, I tell you, there will be a turnaround, a dramatic turnaround for Nigeria. And those are the things that we have been saying for some time. All we need is a government that is willing and know what to do. And I'm sure if we put that in place, everyone will be for the better, sir.
Isn't that the demand of the young people that led to end bad governance, that they are saying, create the enabling environment for us to thrive? But rather than creating that enabling environment, we, recently, I believe you've read it in the news, that 10 out of the leaders of the protest have been charged with treason. How would you, how do you look at it? How would the government convince the young generation that they work for them when they in turn say that they've committed treasonable felony for only demanding that their right and their voice be heard?
Sir, the right for protestation is civil and it's democratic. In any democratic setting, the right to go out and protest because you believe that things are not right, it's only democratic. And I think if they want to, sentence our youth for treason for act of protestation, it's just a monumental mistake. And I think the president needs to look back on that. I don't know what kind of advisors, are advising him on this, but it's just totally out of course. We believe that Nigerians, the youths that we know that we deal with on a regular basis, on a day-to-day, sir, if they create the right environment for them, Nigerians will excel as they do around the world. So I urge the president to look back, sit back, and look at that decision again, and let it be reversed quickly.
So let's talk about private sector. That is where you are a key player in. Now, if we look at the Nigerian private sector today, what role do businesses like yours play in stabilizing the economy during this time of economic hardship?
Yeah, the private sector, around the world, when you have difficulties in economies, they position themselves to drive it. like they say, government have no business in business, but what we have today is that the policies of the present administration is killing the private sector. Killing the private sector. We are finding it difficult, to thrive. Access to funding is almost non-existent. And how then do you come in as private sector, to drive the economy? I give you an example of mine, where we have, quite a number of staffs that already we should send them home. But we are not able to do it because we look at it and said, if you do that, you think about the ripple effect on families. And consequently, we have had to take that cost for over a year, paying salaries to workers that are not working, just to ensure that the economy is not broken down in a particular direction.
Isn't that the same thing the NNPC is doing when they do not produce any drop of oil and they keep paying salaries?
Well, in the case of NNPC, that at the moment, you cannot really say it is the private sector, as it were, because of government involvement in that particular establishment. So you can't say that it's a private sector driven. So I don't want to agree with that, because then you have government presence, and one of the responsibility of government is to make provision for people. So government is actually intervening in that sense. But I'm talking about private sector interventions in the economy, just like for example Aliko Dangote is doing, and intervening and sending palliatives to communities and then giving scholarships. Those are the things that the private sector should be doing at this time. And as you know, the rate of inflation is high. And every time demand is higher than supply, it's inflation. You understand? And so that's why we're having that. The private sector, the policies that government should be rolling out are policies that should assist the private sector, so that in turn, the private sector will be able to make direct interventions that will help the economy and consequently help the people.
Let's talk about insecurity and its impact. In your view, how has insecurity, especially in the northern region of Nigeria, affected the economic growth and investors' confidence? Just for instance, in the last couple of days, we've been seeing series of videos being released by one bandit called Bello Tunji, who has been threatening the Nigerian state, and farmers are no longer going to work. And we also heard that some construction companies, their expatriate staff are being kidnapped. So how does all this threaten the already flatlined economy that we have?
Well, thank you. The case of insecurity in Nigeria is quite monumental, and any serious government will want to look at it and solve this problem of constant insurgency, banditry that you have across, particularly in the north, but all across Nigeria. Now, this affects investors. Investors will never come to an environment where you have insecurity. They are not sure if their investment is secured, and if they do turn up, they are not sure of safety to their life. And you are talking about investors. The truth remains that any serious government will sit down and tackle this problem of insecurity that has been lingering on for so long. As long as the problem of insecurity does exist in Nigeria, we are going nowhere. I expect that this present administration will sit down and look at the problem of insecurity across Nigeria. And that has to do so much also with the rate of unemployment. The truth of the matter is that once you have our youths that are unemployed, the next thing you will have is insecurity, sir. There's no two ways about it. There's no two ways about it, sir. They need to sit down and solve this problem of insecurity across our land, from coast to coast, whether it is in the north, whether it is in the southeast, whether it is in the south-south, whether it is in the southwest. We need to sit down and have a deliberate policy on how to solve insecurity.
But many would argue that you are from the South. Some would say the sub-regions haven't really done their best in solving local insecurity. Some would then argue, actually, that the federal government, when this government came in, that they basically changed the security chiefs. You can see the NIA and the DG of SSS or DSS being sacked. So, and those, the security approaches being taken by this government to solving this problem, whereas the sub-regionals are apparently not doing like the federal government is doing.
Well, in some sense, you could say that it's okay. Some of the developments you have just mentioned are only very recently, like that of the DG of DSS, fairly recent. Knowing the kind of insecurity we have in the land, this should have been a decision that called for constant review. Obviously, the current security architecture is not working. Today, present security institutions, you rely more on intelligence, on surveillance. That's not what we have. But if you talk about the regional, moves made, like the Southwest, for example, you have a Motekum, which has helped to a large extent. But never forget that even in the Southeast, you still have a lot of problems regarding insecurity. Today, the Monday sit at home is still there. That is insecurity in itself. So these are the things that we need to look at. I think that, what the federal government has done is a far cry, to solving the problems of insecurity. And I think, like you said, whether it is Southwest or Southeast or South, there's still a lot more to be done to solve this problem of insecurity. It's a huge problem. And we need to sit down to have this discussion.
We have the insecurity there, but let's come to a topic like job creation, where we know that Nigeria faces high unemployment rate, especially among the youth. What policy or strategies do you believe can effectively help the government to address this crisis, being an employer of labor who is a big player in the private sector?
Well, I think, like I mentioned earlier, there's no two ways. Nigeria is ripe, for a very robust SME structure, to be kept in place if we have a government that is willing. And then, industrialization. We have everything to industrialize. We have everything. And to make it worse, we were once there. 30 years ago, we were manufacturing everything. We need to start producing things. If government will cut down on the obvious waste that we see, by even as much as 20%, we'll be able to turn the economy around, provide employment for our youths, give them the environment, like I've just said, to express themselves. Our youths, the spirit for ICT is monumental. We need to open up those areas and make sure, our youths are employed. And I tell you, this is one of the things, that makes for insecurity. If we can tackle those things and create the environment for them, just as I said earlier, you will discover that Nigeria is on its way to major progress.
In that case, then I'll ask specifically now for you and within your sector, how do businesses like yours manage the risks associated with the high level of insecurity in this country, and what measures do you think could be improved for these security situations?
Well, for us, it's quite, like survival of the fittest, really. And these are the things that where government is failing. If government will make us, sometimes we have to negotiate, with some, individuals that we don't otherwise need to do. If government is up and about solving those security problems, I don't need to go to a particular place and start to do private deals to make sure that I work safely. Those are the things that we do. Those are the things that we do to be able to survive in the industry. And it has this negative impact in terms of, the ease of doing business in our environment. So I really think that, this is something that government needs to look at quickly. Thank you.
Okay, I will not let you go without asking you this question, understanding that you are one of the ardent Obidient in the national and in Delta State. recently, if not last week, Dr. Yunusa Tanko been appointed to head the interim Obidient leadership. What's your view about the Obidient movement totally, what it stands for, and what does the future hold for the Obidient movement?
Thank you. This is, for me, a very important question. Like some of us who are not career politicians, who are in politics, who came in as technocrats, and we saw in the man called Obi himself, what we have not seen in politicians, that has, attracted us to that movement. And I want to say quickly, sir, that this Obidient thing has gone beyond the man. And I believe that what is happening in Nigeria today is quite novel. And we will see that where to take Nigeria to where it ought to be, this is only in the hands of the Obedience. I'm convinced, and seeing what is happening even in other parts of Africa. I know of Obedience that are in Cameroon, sir. They are Cameroonians, but the Obedient spirit is already driving something in those particular, African states. And you have it across. So for us, we are sold out to it. I believe that, the new Nigeria that we are craving for and looking up to can only be delivered on the platform of Obedience. That's my take on it. And I'm all sold out to it. That's why in the last election cycle, I was in it, and we were at the forefront. And we thank God for what we see today and what is resonating and what is turning in the system. That if it is sustained, Nigeria the new Nigeria that we've been craving for, it will be delivered.
So what you're in essence saying that the Obedience, as it were, are a group of individuals who yearn for new Nigeria, but are also not to a particular party affiliated to. Is that correct?
Oh, that's very correct. That's why you can see across the board in all parties, they were Obedience everywhere. You understand?
Even in the APC, they're Obedient.
Even in the APC, they were Obedient. People were openly saying, I'm a APC Obedient. I'm Obedient APC. You understand?
You're right. During the election of Hope Uzodinma, we saw the AKA Obedient for Hope Uzodinma.
We have that all across the board. That's what is happening. That's where we believe that this new Nigeria is going to come from.
So you believe that the 2027 election will be won by the Obedience?
Oh, I'm convinced, absolutely, that come 2027, the Obedience, will have victory.
Thank you very much. That's a very fine place to anchor it. Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you so much.